This is a podcast about both having autism and living with someone who has autism. My mom is Sonya, and I'm Josh, and this is Josh Has Autism.
Hey everybody, welcome to Josh Has Autism.
Hello.
I'm so glad you're here today. Josh, how you doing?
I'm tired.
What? You're tired because you worked yesterday?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was a long day.
Oh my gosh, it was ridiculous.
Yeah. So you're still worn out from it?
Yeah.
You did window washing yesterday, right?
Yeah.
When I picked you up at your very last stop, it was a small, what's called a strip mall.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a small office space.
Yeah.
Is that what most of them are like that you did yesterday?
That's probably one of the smallest ones we do.
Oh, wow. So sometimes you do like major grocery stores.
Yeah, we had
places like that.
I think it was 3 or 4, maybe even 5 Winn-Dixies yesterday.
Oh, wow. That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot. So no wonder you're tired.
Yeah.
So we'll just get right to it. And you let me know if you need to wind down.
Okay,
we'll
thank
call it quits. You got it. What I want to talk to you about today are sensory issues.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Yeah, oh boy. So basically, it's I want to talk to you about the sensations just from day-to-day living.
Okay.
So in 2013, the American Psychiatric Association added sensory sensitivities to the symptoms that help diagnose autism. So it's in 2013. So
Wait,
I know.
Seriously?
Yeah.
That late?
Yeah. I was surprised by that too.
That's like one of the founding tenets of autism.
Well, now. Yeah. Now it is. But it was something that input wasn't computed.
Wow.
For a long while. It was, but when it was seen, it was put into something that's called sensory processing disorder. So they saw it, but they didn't really connect it the way that they do now. Which, to me, what this means, for you, when you were diagnosed, this wasn't part of it. And so, if you can remember back to when you were a kid, because we've mentioned this before, 7 years old when you were diagnosed. Mm-hmm. And there were a lot of events, a lot of experiences that were happening on a daily basis that, well, certainly before the diagnosis, we didn't understand it.
Right.
But then afterwards, we really didn't, because it wasn't part of the... I want to be careful, because I'm not saying that the doctors didn't explain to us what needed to be explained.
Right.
What I feel like is that they didn't have as much information,
right.
And awareness that regular communities have now, parents have now,
Mm-hmm.
but also the physicians that are diagnosing this have now. So, but there's two different kinds of sensory issues that happen, and sometimes it's like it's sensory seeking.
Mm-hmm.
So for those that need to be stimulated more,
mm-hmm.
And then it's just the what I'm just going to call like the overload that I've seen you experience an awful lot.
Okay.
So when you were a little guy, right around the time, it probably would have been the same year that you were diagnosed. One of the things that jumps out to me that you were sensitive to was the feeling of things, the touch. Yeah. So anything that touched your body would either be comforting to you or it would send you like through the roof.
Like the socks.
Socks. Yes. This, I don't know if you remember it the way that I remember it, but the fact is that every single morning before school, you would put on every single pair of your socks, or I would help you put them on. Every single morning, every sock, and sometimes we would get your shoe on, and sometimes as soon as that... So let me explain this. Sometimes it was just the sock itself, it had to come back off. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it was the sock, we're doing okay, put the shoe on. Nope, the shoe and the sock have to come off.
You know why?
Sometimes we put the sock on, we put the shoe on, and then you take a couple steps. Nope. They all have to come off. Also, with you being then highly agitated.
Yes.
Okay, what were you going to say?
I was going to say that one of the main issues that I had was the little string knots.
Seam.
Yeah, that were on the seam.
Exactly.
And that if it got underneath and in between my toes, I could not stand it.
I know. It's uncomfortable. I don't like it. I don't like it. So sometimes I remember being a kid, and when that was across my toes and it didn't feel good, sometimes I would pull the sock where there was a lot of space in the sock out from the end of my toe, and then take it up top or tuck it under my toes, which wasn't comfortable either, but it was better than having a seam.
Yeah, but then the sock wasn't completely on, so I couldn't do that.
Right. Well, you never did that. You just didn't like the seam. And whoever it was, I don't know if it was Michael Jordan, because he's on the commercials about the seamless shirts,
yes,
and underpants,
Hanes and stuff like that. Yeah.
Right. So I'll just give him credit, because I doubt that he invented it, but clearly he enjoys it too and gets paid for saying so. But whoever invented seamless socks, oh my gosh,
there's seamless socks now.
You have them.
No, No, I don't think so.
Yeah, you do. I get you the kind that are at the... See?
I see a seam.
No, it's different than it was before.
It's right there.
It's different.
For those of you listening in, I actually took my shoe off and showed her that there is that little lump seam. I don't like it whenever it's really big. Mm-hmm. But I've gotten, over the years, more adapted to having to wear them.
Right. I don't know. I remember buying you socks that instead of having the seam across the toe, they were at the very end. Mm. And it seemed that for a while you did much better. I just thought that you had that same kind now.
Oh, no.
Okay, cool. So why can't
there are, however, the shirts that have no tag in them. Mm-hmm. There are underwear that don't have tags in them, and just things like that made it so much easier for me to wear clothing. Right now. Yeah.
Now, so how is it that you're wearing a sock that has a seam then, right now, and you do okay? Like, what do you have to do to make sure that's okay?
I make sure that the shoe doesn't affect it.
What do you mean?
Whenever I buy a shoe, or not a shoe, because you always come in pairs. Whenever I buy shoes,
but you always seem to find one, like on the side of the road, right? There's like one lone shoe.
Yeah.
I see when you're out driving, there's just one shoe hanging out.
Or there's just the Michael Jackson one glove.
One glove, yeah. Yeah.
I guess that's where all of his other gloves went then, on the side of the road.
I don't know. So how do you make the socks feel better?
Honestly, part of it is by the kind of shoes I wear. Mm-hmm. Because I try them on and make sure that I'm comfortable in them. The other part, I don't freak out anymore whenever I have a sensory issue like that. I don't how can I explain it? So I'm not too sure if this is going to come out right, but it's the best with what I got.
Okay.
Okay. I guess it is that I've mellowed out some with age and experience.
Okay.
Whenever it comes to sensory issues.
Yeah. I think that's right, because the things that used to cause you to really get agitated to a point of having to either remove the clothes, or if it's a situation, leave the that the environment immediately. Right. I see that, like, you're able to take some beats now and work it out. And if you still need to, like, so for example, there's too much input all at once, you're able to just kind of leave that situation without screeching, which is what you did as a baby, and I didn't understand that it's what was happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because when you were born, Dad was in the Navy. Then you were born in San Diego, California, and he got transferred over to a little town in Florida to be a Navy recruiter. And so I was away from all family, and you were my first kid, and I didn't know that screeching wasn't part of it. I didn't know.
So you thought I was normal in my abnormality?
Yeah, for a while.
And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing.
It's not. What I came to find out is that through family members is that they, let me know that that's not typically how kids behave, how they communicate, and how they respond to things or react to things. And but no, you take somebody that's never had a kid before, don't know how they act, and then I have one all by myself, and Dad's he's there, but he's working long hours, but and you didn't speak until you were 3, so it was I don't know, kind of hard to figure out what it is that you needed sometimes. And your screeching I thought was just you being upset because I wasn't getting what you were wanting. That might have been it sometimes, but I think for the most part, no. Yeah.
Okay. I know that it's not just the feeling of something on my skin. Like, for sometimes it is the taste and texture. Like, for example, I can't stand sour cream. I haven't since I was a little kid.
Right.
And I mean, I've been to Taco Bell numerous times over my life, and whenever they get it wrong, I remember the difference between then and now. Oh. Then I would freak out and wouldn't be able to eat anything else.
Right.
Now I know, hey, they put sour cream and they shouldn't. Let's send it back and get it remade. Right.
Yeah, because what you're talking about is the way that your life was for a while. The way you experienced it is that what's in front of you is all that there is.
Yeah.
So this is not okay. This can't be okay. So you would really have a difficult time functioning through that because you didn't see and understand that it could be changed.
Right.
We've talked about this before a little bit about how when you were younger and in a restaurant, the way that it was listed on the menu, that was something that we really had to help you through to understand that, well, even though it says that it has shrimp in it, you can take the shrimp out.
Yeah.
And then it's okay. That was so hard for you to understand when you were
chicken and dumplings. I didn't like the chicken, so it'd be dumplings and dumplings.
Dumplings and dumplings, especially when Cracker Barrel dumplings and dumplings.
Oh my gosh, with a side of dumplings and dumplings.
Dumplings on the side, yeah. and you know what? I had to say that I know that is way too many carbs and just a dinner, a starch dinner, essentially. There were times that I was just like, I don't know if you heard the phrase to pick your battles. And there were times when, you know what, if you want to eat dumplings and dumplings with a side of dumplings, have at it. It's going to make for a peaceful meal for the rest of us. Yeah. And, sometimes I just, was tired. Yeah, eat your dumplings. Yeah. But there are things that they are connected to the sensory issues. But you're saying that it's the texture. When you're eating something, it's a texture. So it's not just the taste.
Right.
Because I think most people, some people like sour, some don't. Some people like spicy, some don't.
Yeah.
But the texture of sour cream is what bothered you. Was it not the flavor?
It was both.
Was it?
Yeah.
And other things that... Oh. Yeah, that's funny. Well, it's not funny. It's not funny. Sorry.
Laughing at my misfortune.
Yeah, it was. The shivering just now, the way you did it was funny, but not the fact that it does. But sensory overload is when two or more of the senses, so they are smell, taste, sight, and touch. Smell, taste, sight, touch and hearing.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, there's 5. And
there's 5 senses.
Yeah, and the one that is the main ones that we talk about. I mean, there's more than that, but I don't really want to go into all that today.
Yeah, the 6th sense.
Yeah. So, anyway, the sensory overload is when 2 or more of those senses are experienced at the same time, and they create a stressful situation, and it leads to feeling overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. And
sometimes it can even just be one of them, but there's multiple things going on of it. Like, for example, let's say that I'm in school, and I'm saying this whole example from experience.
Okay.
But there is a lot of people talking about all kinds of different things all at once before class starts. And then someone turns on the radio and this, that, and the other. And there's all kinds of stuff going on. And I wouldn't know where to focus my attention on. Mm-hmm. And it was stressful, yeah. But it also became so daunting and overwhelming to try and listen to just one thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like trying to listen to someone putting 3 different kinds of music styles into one song at the same time. Mm-hmm.
You can't filter them out? They're all coming at you at the same rate? Is that what it feels like?
Sometimes, yes. Mm-hmm. And sometimes if you do music right, you can do that. Mm-hmm. But sometimes there's absolutely so much discord going on that it's like nails on a chalkboard. You can't stand it.
Mm-hmm. Right. What's interesting is this all happens. This happens in the brain. Mm-hmm. And yesterday, I had an appointment. I had to go to a neurologist, and I went to the neurologist because there have been some... Well, our family doctor sent me there. Mm-hmm. So, in 2011, I was in a car accident and got a head injury. And then, about a year and a half ago, I got meningitis and was in the hospital for a week with that. And what I've noticed after that is just some things that I notice that are not normal for me. Mm-hmm. So you've pointed out to me a couple of times. Examples would be that I'll say it's sitting on the car, and you say, you mean it's sitting on the couch? And then you point out to me that I just said it's sitting on the car.
Yeah.
So I'm using words that are not the right word.
I did that yesterday.
You did it?
I did it. I was saying this guy was using a water gun to keep pigeons off the little awning thing that was in front of their store while I was working. And I went up to him. I went up to one of his colleagues later on, whenever he was back in the store, and I said something along the lines of he was shooting pigeons at people. I'm like, what? and the guy brought it to my attention that I said that, and then we both started cracking up.
That's funny. Oh no.
Oh no, it's contagious.
Yeah. Right. It's wearing off on you.
It's wearing off on me.
Yeah, it's like it's contagious.
It's rubbing.
See, I did it again just now.
Yes, that's why I just brought it.
See, those are the things that have been happening, and I noticed it. So it's been about 1.5 years since I had the meningitis, and it took a while to get over that. But those are kind of
it took you months.
Yeah. It probably took about 1 year for everything to kind of settle down, and so the remnants are using the words, the incorrect word, and also I've been having a difficult time finding the words when I'm speaking, and also concentrating. So.
Oh my gosh, you're turning autistic.
Well, this is why I bring this up. Because the neurologists, they're doing all kind of stuff for me. What they're doing is they're doing an MRI of my brain. They're doing long testing, like 5 or 6 hours worth of testing that's coming up. They're sleeping, but it's not a sleep disorder. It's not like the sleep apnea like Pappy has.
Right.
It's something other than that, because I don't have sleep apnea.
You just have sleep aptitude.
I wake up constantly.
Oh,
and
ineptitude.
I am an inept sleeper. That's correct. Inept sleeper. And then they're sending me there. They want me to get a Fitbit because I'm having issues with kind of like a lightheadedness, and they want to
track your heart rate,
in real time,
blood pressure and stuff.
When that happens, so I'm able to check it out. The other thing is, this doctor said that. So I love this about him. He said every person, he believes, needs to have a counselor and a masseuse. So he is referring me to a counselor, and because he said sometimes just talking about stuff can just trigger something and then release it, and then But what? And he didn't tell me about a masseuse, so I need to find a masseuse, I guess. But anyways, it's interesting that what I've noticed is that my brain is I noticed that it's functioning different than it used to function. And again, sometimes I don't have say-so. And what it's doing, misspeaking, like I just did. I don't have say-so. It happens, and I don't choose to do that.
Right.
But it just happens. And so...
Shooting pigeons at people.
Exactly. Exactly. Yep. And the doctor he brought up so I asked him a bunch of questions about the brain and how this works and what happens, and he brought up that folks with autism, that we can be sitting here having this conversation, and you will be very aware of the shirt that you're wearing and how it feels on your skin, and at the same time you'll be noticing there's some conversation in the hallway, quite a ways away, but somebody with autism would notice that. They would notice the light. If there was a flicker in it whatsoever, that would get attention.
Yeah, and it would distract.
Exactly. And what I told him is that about you, and I said what you helped me to understand is that when we use the term shutting down, you've said you don't like that term because it means just the opposite. Because it doesn't mean that there's nothing happening. It means that there's so much happening that it's such overload that you get overwhelmed. Yeah. And so anyway, I thought that was interesting that, the neurologist was talking to me about autism yesterday. It's just interesting. I don't know what's going to happen with all this testing, but I also remember you going through hours upon hours of testing. Yeah. And I think a lot of the stuff that I'm going to be doing is cognitive, but I'm not sure entirely. Okay. And then I told him too that in my lifetime in counseling, when I've gone to counseling, so your dad went because he was in the Navy, was gone for 6 months. and I took care of everything.
Yeah.
I did it all. So when he comes back and steps in, like so we went to counseling
Mm-hmm.
just to figure out how to do that.
Yeah.
How do we find our way back here? Right in the beginning.
And the women in our family have always been very headstrong, very strong-willed.
Correct.
And so, yeah,
Yes, correct.
I can definitely see that being an issue.
But that, and then earlier in my life, it's always been like this, that I told him that I was joking, but this is true, that when I've gone to counseling, the counselors have said to anybody else that was there, like family counseling, whatever, they'd be like, you can go. It's nice meeting you. You don't need to come back. Sonya, you need to come back. And I'm like, hey! So I am definitely not opposed to counseling. I get it. There are sensations and experiences that you have from everyday living that have just stuck out, that have bothered you. We just talked about the sock issue that you dealt with, and I'm so happy that, clearly I live with you. I would notice if you were putting on every single sock that you had and took it off every single day. I would notice that. And you haven't done that for years.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful for that you don't have to deal with that anymore. What is it about pencils?
One thing that helps me focus on what I'm doing is I will take whatever I'm writing with, whether it be a pen, pencil, or whatever, highlighter maybe, and I will, at this point, I make sure it's capped so it doesn't stab me.
Yeah.
But I grab it by its end and then I flip it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I catch it and I flip it again and I catch it and I just keep doing that.
Mm-hmm. So what's interesting about that, and the other thing about pencils, is that when other people are using them on paper.
Yes, it's so distracting. It is, like, let's say it's test time for something, and everyone has to be quiet, and all you hear is the writing of pencils and stuff on the papers.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that just drives me nuts, and I can't concentrate because of it.
Right. So those are it. So what's interesting is that those are on both sides of the sensory issue that we're talking about.
Yeah.
The flipping of the pencil is sensory seeking. So it's movement that you're creating that calmed you down.
Mm-hmm.
And it can show up in different ways for different people. So if there's a flapping hands, and for you, flipping a pencil is this action, this motion that helps to calm you down at the same time. So that's sensory seeking. And on the other side of that, when somebody's writing, that's sensory overload for you.
Yeah.
That's not some... Now, I'm not sure exactly if it's called sensory overload.
Right, you're just using terms that you're familiar with.
Correct.
That are actually the correct words for you to be using.
Thanks.
But one thing I've noticed is that the way you just described it, though, sounds a lot like OCD. In that people with OCD have to do something, and they have to do it a certain way, and a certain number of times, or something like that, to make them feel okay.
Well, right, and so I would say that maybe the way that you brush your teeth and the pattern that you use when you brush your teeth might fit into that category more clearly than you flipping the pencil. And I'll tell you why. Because when you brush your teeth, it's a clear pattern every single time.
Right.
And you have to do things. And so there's a rhythm that I hear. I'm not even in the room with you when you're brushing your teeth, but I hear that it's a rhythm. There's a certain amount of... So you brush, and then it's the
number of times I've rinsed.
Yeah, it's when the toothbrush under the streaming water, bringing it to your mouth, and then spitting, and then doing it over and over and over, and it's a certain
cadence or rhythm.
Yes. Yeah. And so that would seem to me like that you're talking about with OCD, but the flipping of your pencil, even when you were younger, you told me that it helps you feel better.
Yeah.
That is very different. That's a sensory issue, because it's not always a pattern, but it's that movement that happens, or it's like those. What are those things that go like this? Fidget. It's a
fidget spinners.
It's a movement. That's and I like those. Those are kind of cool because you turn them sideways and you feel the change. And it's pretty cool. But so yes, I think that the pencil flipping that you've done your whole life is from the time you started school, and you still do it. That's a sensory issue, sensory seeking, because it calms you down. That motion is one that you've found that calms you down.
Yeah.
So
some people rub rocks. Some people flip pencils.
That's right. Something that is very, very difficult for you is that you hate wearing wet clothes.
Oh my gosh, I hate it. I really do. If it is swimming trunks, I deal better with it. But I don't like wearing wet clothes at all.
Is it just the obvious, like they were uncomfortable, or what does it feel like to you? The
one way I could describe it is like, you know how a dog, as soon as it gets in a dry spot away from the rain, how it'll shake its fur out?
Yes.
Sometimes I wish I could do that. Because I hate the feeling of wet cloth on my skin.
Does it hurt?
No, it doesn't hurt.
Is it just extremely noticeable?
It's so noticeable, it's almost unbearable.
Right. And your job is pressure washing.
Yeah.
And you wear boots.
Almost go up to my knees, yeah.
Right. And do you ever get wet?
Sometimes, a little bit. Most of the time, though, whenever I'm doing something like that, I'm wearing a giant waterproof raincoat.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought so.
Yeah.
I thought you were.
Sometimes, though, you're going to get wet regardless.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that's just one of those things that feels you want to get away from that as fast as you can. Like
away from wet clothes.
Yes. Away from being wet.
I don't mind being wet. It's whenever the clothes stick to me that I can't stand.
Is it something that if you're in a situation where you're wearing wet clothes and you can't change right away, how does that make you feel?
Have you ever seen a cat try and get away from water? But they're being held in place.
Oh no, I don't ever want to see that. I don't.
That's how I feel.
Okay, so it's pretty intense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. You don't like the beach?
No. We live near a beach.
We live very close to a beach.
I don't like going onto it.
Yes. Is it because of the sand?
It's part of it, yeah.
And as far as the sand goes, you don't like it on your feet?
No.
So you don't like the way it feels when you step on it? Or you don't like that it gets between your toes? Or what?
And I'm really paranoid about what I might step on.
Okay, that's in the sand.
Yeah.
So it's not just the sand itself, it's what could be in the sand.
Yes.
It's the fear of the unknown.
I guess. But it's a realistic fear.
Okay. Because it's happened before?
Not just with me.
Okay.
And I'm sure even you've heard those horror stories where like somebody steps on an unused needle or something.
Right.
And
So that kind of stuff. Again, it's the unknown. You don't know what's in the sand, so you don't know if it's something that's going to stab you, or if you're going to get hurt.
Or if there's a jellyfish that was had sand cover it.
Right.
Or anything like that, yeah.
Yep. What else don't you like about the beach?
Sharks.
Mm-hmm.
Crabs. Fish. Dead things.
Mm-hmm.
I like the seashells.
Mm-hmm.
If there's nothing in them.
Right, okay.
I like playing in the water.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever the waves come, I like jumping up with them and riding them in and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But you'll be hard pressed to get me actually into the water to begin with.
Right, that's true. What about here? We live where the water is sometimes so clear, and sometimes even when it's not clear, it's this beautiful blue-green.
Yeah.
And that is just white. And when we live in a place where the beaches are just
beautiful.
Yes, incredible.
Yeah.
White sands, beautiful blue-green water. It's like you're in the Caribbean.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's so warm it feels like a bath. It's extremely beautiful.
That's another thing I don't like about the sand is it's either too hot or too cold.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
that's true. I agree with that. Yeah, so there's a lot going on there.
Yeah.
But you don't mind getting wet, like you will go in a swimming pool.
Yeah.
You don't mind that at all.
Right. I mean, I still don't like going in my clothes.
Sure, right. Another thing that bothers you, just a couple more things, is that from the time you were a little guy, you like to be covered up with blankets.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't, at the time, I didn't know of something called a weighted blanket. But there was this, Dad had this mink blanket that he bought from overseas. Now, I should tell everybody, it wasn't real mink. So, that
otherwise you'd be all puffed up.
I would be all puffed up and very sad because
you love animals.
Yes.
Yeah.
In every capacity. So I don't want them being hurt to give up their fur.
Right.
But the heavier the better.
Yeah.
The more the better. It didn't matter what season it was. You wanted that heaviness. You wanted that feeling of those blankets on top of you.
Yeah.
And so that's a sensory. That's you finding what works for you. So that's also, again, a way of you sensory seeking, like that you're taking care of yourself that way. One last thing about this with you personally is that we talked about this the other day, so I think you're okay with me bringing it up, is that you have a over response to pain.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just describe that.
I am very sensitive to how things hurt me. Mm-hmm. Like, do you remember what not the example, but what we were talking about with this? Because I don't. I can't think of an example off the top of my head either.
No, that's probably why I'm going to a neurologist.
No, you're going to a neurologist because you're crazy.
Maybe that too. A little bit of that. A little bit of that. I'm okay with that.
I know that yesterday I got hurt at work.
What happened?
We were riding in between, going between the two different locations that we were at. Like, we were going from one location to another, and I was trying to get my jacket off or something like that, so my arm was back behind my shoulder, but it was up against the door like the window sill of the door or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And he hit this bump that made the stuff in the back go flying.
Whoa.
Yeah. And it jarred my arm, and it hurt so bad.
In your shoulder or your elbow?
All up in my upper arm.
Mm-hmm.
Going from just below my elbow where it was resting on it, all the way up into my shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
And it hurt. And he's like, the guy I worked with, he's like, that couldn't hurt you.
Mm.
I'm like, oh, those words.
Right. As if like minimizing what you're experiencing.
Yeah.
And I
don't think he meant it in a mean way either.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that's what I felt.
Right.
Was that it really hurt.
Mm-hmm. How long did it hurt?
About half an hour.
Yeah. So you're better now?
My arm's still a little stiff, but that might be from sleeping on it. I don't know.
Right, okay. All right. Well, because a lot of things... So talking about... And again, I don't remember what we were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that there's... Throughout your life, it's something where... for other people... it would be easy to say, well, that, like the situation that you're describing.
Needles. Whenever I was a little kid and I had to get shots for blood work or something.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
What was it, like 5 military guys or whatever?
So there was a time that you were on this medication, and we had to check your liver functions often. Using
blood work.
Yes, drawing blood. And it was an army base, and yes, you were a little guy. You were what?
Not barely 5.
Well, at that time up there, you probably 8.
Okay.
8, 9 years old. But yeah, these army guys had to come in, and there would be nurses talking to you, trying to calm you down, and I would have to leave the room. But they would have to keep you still because they had to do it. And that was just too harsh. It was too difficult. We ultimately came to an agreement that if you allowed them to draw blood, you could get anything you wanted at Taco Bell. You remember that?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. I was trying to do anything I could to get you to cooperate because the thought of you being held down to have your blood drawn was horrifying.
Traumatic.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so I was like, okay, and I even talked to the doctors, Josh and I either have to come to an agreement where he's going to be okay with this, going to let you do this, or we got to change medicine. Because this is not going to happen.
Right.
Because that event, that one time when that happened was just, it really concerned me.
Yeah.
So, yes, what I was going to say is that people that don't experience the sensory issues don't understand that you feel everything more intense.
Yes.
And so when something doesn't hurt somebody else, it could really genuinely hurt.
Yeah.
You feel uncomfortable. It can, when you... Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I just thought of the perfect way to explain it.
Okay.
Some people that look at people with autism may think that we don't feel enough. And the problem is that most of the time we feel too much.
Yeah, agreed. I think that's the perfect way to put it. Yeah. And I would just add to that in a variety of ways.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And on that note, I'm hungry. So.
Okay. All right. Yep. Well, thanks, Josh. Yep. He's showing me the timer that we use. He's hungry. We got to get out of here. So, thank you everybody for hanging out with us again. We really appreciate it. Please, wherever you find this, if you can share it with others, and give us a 5-star review if you're so inclined, that would be wonderful. And thank you so much for spending time with us. Love you.
Bye.